When I traveled through the book, the story had already ended. The second male lead lived in seclusion in the countryside, and the male and female protagonists ruled the world together. I was a passing stranger in the book, destined for death, yet despite this, I married the second male lead. I always knew he loved the female lead, and that I would die sooner or later. Yet, 3 years into our marriage, he cared for her with unwavering care, even promising me a long life. Just when I thought he was truly in love with me, the female lead was poisoned. He hurried to the capital, forgetting that it was the day I fell ill. 1. Another attack struck, and I bit the quilt tightly in pain, my hair wet with sweat. The man who always rushed to my aid was gone. Xiao Chui, her eyes red, kept wiping my sweat, complaining, "Your son-in-law never forgets the day you fell ill. Why hasn't he come yet? I haven't felt this kind of pain in 3 years." The servant who had gone out to fetch help arrived, trembling, and handing me a piece of paper. Xiao Chui snatched the letter and read it out loud. "The Empress has been poisoned. I have been asked to leave my husband's retreat. I hope you take care." The ink was damp, clearly freshly written. She gritted her teeth and demanded, "When did my son-in-law leave?" "This morning." The servant dared not lie. Everyone knew today was the day I was ill. "Go out," I forced myself to say, letting Xiao Chui close the door. Another wave of pain washed over me, and tears fell from my eyes. When I heard the word Empress, I knew I had lost. "Miss, I'll go get the court physician." Seeing my distress, Xiao Chui turned to leave, but after she finished speaking, she froze in her tracks. "Gu Huaicha is a miracle doctor. Only he can treat my illness. Besides, how could there be another doctor in this miracle doctor's mansion?" I knew he was the second male lead, and had once deeply loved the female lead, but I never expected him to treat me like this. My chest ached and every breath was an agony. I transmigrated into the novel very early, from the womb. At first, I simply thought I had traveled through time. It wasn't until I met Gu Huaicha that I realized I had. Because of my sickly condition, my father sought out many miraculous healers, but none could cure me. We didn't meet until my father found out where Gu Huaicha lived in seclusion. My father wanted me to marry him. I was about to refuse, but when I met my father's fiery eyes, I accepted. At first, I kept in mind that the second male lead loved the female lead, and no matter how outstanding he was, I wouldn't allow myself to be tempted. But people are made of flesh and blood. After 3 years of marriage, how could my heart be as firm as a rock? He gave me acupuncture every night to dispel the ills in my body. Whenever I was ill, he would stay by my side. Everyone said I wouldn't live past 16, but only Gu Huaicha said, "With him, I will live 100 years. Now I'm 18, having successfully survived 16. Thinking back to the plot of the book, the story ends. The second male lead lives in seclusion in a rural village, while the male and female protagonists rule the world together. I thought he'd escaped the plot and truly fallen in love with me. His love was so intense that I couldn't avoid it. The lock on my heart was slowly being pried open. But as soon as I faced my heart, fate played a trick on me. This was my last attack, and Gu Huaicha said that after this, I'd be cured. If I didn't completely eliminate the illness, I'd suffer a resentment. He missed me day and night, even whispering in my ear yesterday, "Io, when you're well, can we consummate our marriage?" Blushing, I gently touched his lips. Today he had left me, sick and ill, without hesitation, just to help the female protagonist detoxify. But with so many imperial physicians in the palace, why was he the only one missing? 2. My vision was hazy, and when I came to, someone had already taken my pulse. My heart warmed and I turned to look at the man, only to lower my head in disappointment. I swallowed the words "Gu Lang" in my mouth. "Miss, I've sent for Elder Qing. You'll be fine soon." Xiao Chui tried to comfort me, but I knew it was useless. Sure enough, Elder Qing withdrew his hand and said, "I can't help you. Elder Qing, you're the best doctor in Qingyi Hall. How could you not even relieve the pain? Xiao Chui asked, her tone questioning. I took her hand and glanced at Elder Qing apologetically. Fortunately, he understood her concern and didn't make a fuss. I'll send for another. Xiao Chui gritted her teeth, trying to leave again, but I shook my head. Don't go. It's just 2 hours. No one can cure me, otherwise I wouldn't be predicted to live past 16. Gu Huaicha saved me, but now, he's sent me back to hell. If I'd known this would happen, why would I have saved me? A few days passed in a flash, and my body returned to the state where I coughed up blood every 3 steps and fainted every 5. I lay on the rattan chair, my face still pale, a dull pain in my chest. The sun was warm, but I felt nothing until a servant announced that Gu Huaicha had returned. My heart was in turmoil, and I looked up, only to see him carrying a woman in green into the mansion, not even glancing at me. Miss, our son-in-law. Xiao Chui was furious and tried to chase after him, but I pulled her back. A sweet, fishy taste rose in my throat, and I forced Xiao Chui away. She might not know who it was, but I did. Besides the heroine, who else would love to wear green at all times? Back in the courtyard, I couldn't hold back my blood any longer. Xiao Chui's eyes flushed with anxiety. I'll go get the uncle. Xiao Chui, don't go. He's not your uncle anymore. I held her hand tightly, forcing her to go find Gu Huaicha. He was so obvious, why would I bother to torture him? But the uncle clearly cared deeply about the young lady before. Xiao Chui was right. Gu Huaicha cared about me, I could see it, but that only worked if the heroine was okay. Look at me now, compared to her, I'm nothing. I still remember the ambiguity and heartbeats of those years. We first met on our wedding night. When the veil was lifted, I made it clear that he would be the healer, and I would be a figurehead. He smiled, placed his hand on my pulse, and said gently, we're husband and wife, so how can we be just a figurehead? I said I wouldn't live past 16, and his smile widened. After that, he said nothing more, and my symptoms gradually disappeared. I once gave him gold as a token of gratitude, but he returned it unopened, always bringing me gifts. Sometimes it was a bracelet, a hairpin, or even cakes and novelties. He was trying to cheer me up, but once I realized my feelings were fluttering, I began to withdraw, to distance myself. It rained heavily that day, and he stood in the rain, repeatedly calling, Io, tightly clutching the osmanthus cake he'd brought me. My heart softened, and thinking the story was over, I opened the door. He hugged me tightly, his eyes red, and solemnly promised me a lifetime of love. At that moment, his eyes shone with love, and I thought we could really be together. Alas, I was ultimately wrong. 3. Then, miss, are we going home? Xiao Chui sighed softly, understanding what I meant. I miss my father. Wiping the blood from my lips, I asked Xiao Chui to fetch me a pen and paper. I didn't want to argue, nor did I want to argue. A passerby and the heroine were simply incomparable. When 2 appeared at Gu Huaicha's courtyard, there were 2 more guards at the door. The bright green characters told me they were the heroine Sujiaha's men. Before I could react, a sharp sword was thrust across my neck, leaving a trace of blood. Miss. Xiao Chui glared at the men, attempting to rush over and push him away, but I held him firmly. Gu Huaicha is my husband. As soon as she finished speaking, the sword vanished, but they remained blocking the door, their voices cold. Divine Dr. Gu doesn't allow anyone to enter. I froze in my tracks, bitterness welling in my heart. In the past, I had been free to enter and leave his courtyard. Many distinguished guests came to see me, and there were no shortage of guards, but each time he would make a point of saying, my wife, there's no need to stop me. He said I could come in any time, anywhere, as long as I wanted. But now he said anyone, including me. 3 years of love, not intense but deep, the disparity between now and then was so great that it clenched my heart. But meeting the guard's cold gaze, I choked back my tears and stepped back slightly. Sorry to bother you. Xiao Chui had grown up with me, so how could she not know what I meant? Even though she was reluctant, she had no choice but to wait with me outside the courtyard. The sun was scorching, and I felt a little shaky, but I couldn't leave. I was afraid I would hesitate and stay. Even though my vision was hazy, I remained standing. I don't know how long I waited, perhaps until dusk, when I finally saw Gu Huaiche's figure. A young man walked towards me, his face as gentle as jade now tinged with fatigue, his hair disheveled despite his usual meticulousness. I'd only seen him this haggard when he was ill, and I thought it was something unique to me. But seeing him now, a sense of irony suddenly struck me. His words about loving you and not letting you down were all false. Why are you waiting here? Have you had dinner? Gu Huaiche was slightly taken aback when he saw me, and wanted to reach over and put his arm around my shoulder as usual. I moved aside, blood oozing from the corner of my lips. The scar on my neck had scabbed over, but it was burning with pain. Who hurt you? How could there be blood? Gu Huaiche hadn't seen me sick in ages, and he was a little dazed. I didn't answer his question. He handed me a piece of paper. He frowned, opened the letter, and then paled the next moment. Io, you want to divorce me? Perhaps in disbelief, a dark glint flashed in those indifferent eyes. Yes. I calmly wiped the blood from my lips, tightly holding on to Xiao Chui, who wanted to question me. Deciding when necessary is the way I, Shen Xiao, am. All that talk of compromising yourself for love. That's all bullshit. I never want to compromise myself. There are so many men in the world. It's just a tree. Can you hang me like that? Why? Didn't you promise? He wanted to say that I promised him that night, but then he remembered that the day he left was the day I fell ill. I'm sorry, Io. The Empress's life is hanging by a thread. I have to leave. He stared at me, his love hard to hide. I avoided his eyes and reminded him, sign the document and we'll part ways. He's the second male lead, so naturally, he's deeply affectionate. But I know the person he's deeply in love with isn't me. 4. Sign. My legs are already aching, and I don't want to hear his explanation. Io, don't be so willful. Your body can't handle the pain. This time, it's my fault. Don't worry, I'll find a way to heal you. Gu Huaiche sighed softly, guilt in his eyes. He was apologizing, but I didn't want a second of it. Gu Huaiche, I spoke again, but my words were incredibly cold. He stared at me, suddenly frightened. Io, can I check on you now? He tried to take my pulse, but I took another step back, my face growing paler. His expression changed, and he wanted to come over and hug me, but a gentle female voice echoed from behind him, Huaiche, it hurts. With just these words, Gu Huaiche instantly turned and ran into the courtyard. Where does it hurt? I'll reapply the medicine for you. He supported her, his eyes filled with worry and anxiety. I raised my eyes and met hers. Her features were gentle yet sharp, worthy of the heroine of a palace drama novel. And the look she gave me was filled with a hint of hostility and contempt, as if to tell me that, to Gu Huaiche, she was the most important. Xiao Chui didn't rush forward to question me. Instead, she picked up the fallen divorce paper, wrote the 3 words Gu Huaiche on it, and dragged me away. Miss, let's go home. She angrily pulled me along, but not at all fast. I chuckled softly, suddenly feeling a sense of relief. I should have known that the second male lead's love for the female lead was standard. The story was over, but the person remained the same. Loving a man involved with the female lead is a waste of time. If I didn't withdraw in time, I would be doomed. Is there anything I need to pack? As we reached the door, Xiao Chui remembered. At this point, I took her hand and walked out of the divine doctor's mansion. There was nothing here that I could ever miss. It was already dark when we got home. Father, having heard the news, hurried over, his eyes red. Why did you come back? Father's face was filled with worry, and he lost his voice when he saw my pale face. It had been ages since he'd seen me so sick, and now, his eyes instantly reddened. "Let's go home first," father said, choking back tears. I pretended not to see, but my heart ached. Father treated me so well, but mother passed away early, leaving me alone and frail. Everyone said I wouldn't survive, but father raised me anyway. No one knew better than me how much he wanted me to be well. That's why he wanted me to marry Gu Huaicha and live a good life. But now, I was back, and he knew without even asking. Something unexpected happened. "Daddy, go to bed early." I returned home only to discover that my yard had been constantly being cleaned, just as it had been before I got married. Looking at Daddy's distressed eyes, I suddenly felt nothing to be sad about. I couldn't influence the second male lead, but Daddy was my father, uncontrolled by the plot, and he had never loved another child. "We'll talk about it tomorrow. Yaoa, get some rest. Daddy's got you covered." With just these words, all my grievances washed over me. "Okay." I held back my tears and turned back inside. I wasn't a child anymore. How could I let Daddy waste his energy on me? Xiao Chui understood my meaning and remained silent. It wasn't until we returned to the yard that the tears fell. My chest surged and the blood started to flow. Finally, I fell asleep, but as soon as I opened my eyes, Xiao Chui said, "Gu Huaicha is here." 5. My mood instantly soured, but remembering that Daddy was still receiving him, I could only let Xiao Chui help me to the reception room. What caught my eye was Daddy's slightly cold expression, and Gu Huaicha's face brimming with guilt. If Daddy were angry, it would certainly not be just this. "Gu Huaicha, what had he said?" "Daddy, this is Dr. Gu." I took my seat, as indifferent as when we first met, as if we had never met or known each other before, like a stranger. His eyes had been fixed on me since I walked in. At my words, his pupils dimmed for a moment, and his fists clenched at his sides. Desperate, I could only utter, "I'm sorry." "Dr. Gu, why are you here? You and I have divorced, and we should never meet again." His words were cold, but the man before me was not calm. "Io, I never agreed to the divorce. I know you misunderstood something. I came here to explain to you. Will you listen to me?" He stepped forward quickly, trying to grab my hand, but Xiao Chui blocked him firmly. "Nothing much to say, I just want a divorce. That was my only request." I wasn't stupid, I could tell clearly whether it was a misunderstanding or not. "Dr. Gu, my daughter is a naughty child and might not be worthy of you. Let's part ways amicably," Daddy said. Although he was scolding me, not a single word was against my side. Dad didn't know why I wanted a divorce, but he knew I was never wrong, and he supported every decision I made. Father-in-law. Huaicha admits his mistake. I hope Yao will give Xiao Su a chance. Xiao Chui will never let her suffer any injustice again. His eyes were filled with sincerity. Xiao Chui hadn't noticed when she'd given way, letting him grab my hand. Just as I was about to shake him off, I found myself speaking uncontrollably, "Daddy, I'll go back with him and see how he explains." I stared at Gu in horror. Huaicha, filled with resentment, actually used drugs on me. But no matter how angry I was, he didn't show it on his face. He didn't dare look at me, only squeezed my hand tightly and said goodbye to my father. Seeing myself about to be taken out of the house, I burst into tears of anxiety. Finally, my father noticed something was wrong and spoke to stop me. "Io, are you really willing to go back with him?" I looked into my father's eyes and shook my head desperately, tears welling up. I wanted to say, I don't want to go with him. But my words came out as, "I do, I'm just a little sentimental." "Don't worry, father. Xiao Su will take good care of Io. I can take care of her. Don't worry, father-in-law." His cold fingertips touched my cheek, gently wiping away the tears, but I felt only sick. The second male lead, a genius doctor, can kill people invisibly with drugs, let alone control them. But I've never seen these methods before. I never knew Gu Huaicha could be so shameless. No matter how unwilling I was, I could only watch Xiao Chui, and I step out of the house and into Gu Huaiche's carriage. As the carriage began to move, I finally lost the feeling of being in control. Rage welled up in me, and I raised my hand, slapping Gu Huaiche across the face. He didn't dodge, his handsome face instantly flushed, and a faint streak of blood shone at the corner of his lips. "Io, have you calmed down?" He lowered his head, his eyes dark. He had undoing the potion, but his grip on me remained tightening, as if loosening even a little would make me disappear completely. "Gu Huaiche, you make me sick." This was the first time I'd cursed someone. What kind of gentle, jade-like miracle doctor? He was nothing but a despicable villain. 6. As long as it means I can be with you, what's the harm in being sick? Gu Huaiche said, not angry, but with a subtle tone. Only then did I realize that the once gentleman was now enveloped in a haze of gloom, his eyes growing darker and darker, like an abyss from which I could not escape. "Can't we part ways amicably? Do you think I'll be satisfied only if I die?" Tears fell without a trace, and my heart was filled with bitterness. Su Jiahe is a master of palace intrigue novels, wielding extraordinary tactics. Even if she ultimately marries the male lead, she wouldn't necessarily let go of the second male lead. After all, while reading this book, Su Jiahe fell for Gu Huaiche countless times, and I could clearly see the possessiveness in her eyes. She has the means and the power, while I only have my father and a small fortune. As a merchant, what can I offer to resist? I don't want to end up with my family torn apart. Why is it so difficult? As long as I'm here, you won't die, and you can't leave me. You can't go back on your promise. His breath drew closer, but his voice was as cold as a venomous snake. The book describes Gu Huaiche as gentle, kind, and compassionate, but it never describes his other side. Can someone who can smile even while killing someone be kind? It was because I couldn't see clearly that I had provoked this mad man. I pushed Gu Huaiche away, wanting to jump from the carriage. My only thought now was escape. "Xiao Chui," he said, without trying to stop me, a simple, sobering thought that instantly sobered me up. Turning around, I met his dark eyes. As his lips curled, the inky color gradually engulfed me, until I was completely enveloped by darkness. Finally, I froze there, as Gu Huaiche pulled me into his arms. "Io, there's nothing between me and her. She's His Majesty's queen." Gu Huaiche hugged me and sighed. "But she looks at you the same way she does me." I didn't try to avoid him anymore, but threw my arms around his neck, my cheeks puffed with anger. I wanted to know what his attitude toward Su Jiahe was. She saved me before, so I was a little anxious. "I didn't mean to leave you. Io, can you forgive me?" He kissed me gently, cautiously. I saw the sparkle of love in his eyes and suddenly smiled. "Send her away, and I'll forgive you." "Okay." He stared at me, his eyes reflecting my smile, and added, "She should have left anyway." Back at the divine doctor's mansion, Gu Huaiche personally carried me down. I huddled in his arms and saw Su Jiahe, her face sullen. Her gaze fell on me, as if locked by a venomous snake. I glanced at her briefly, then averted my gaze. "There's nothing wrong between me and Huaiche. Please don't be angry with him, sister." She smiled at me and tried to come over, but Gu Huaiche led me back, his voice cold. "The Empress's poison has been cured. We will no longer be staying at the divine doctor's mansion." The moment he opened his mouth, it was an order to leave. Su Jiahe's face changed slightly, and his smile was a bit forced. "I don't feel well yet. Can you stay a few days longer? My wife is not feeling well. Your Majesty, please forgive me." He refused and had Su Jiahe leave. His cold demeanor was gone. "Okay." Su Jiahe lowered her head, her voice choking, and finally turned away. Gu Huaiche held me and turned without hesitation, but his slightly furrowed brow and trembling hands told me he wasn't as calm as he appeared. And Su Jiahe would never give up so easily. 7. A few days passed, and Gu Huaiche, and I were back to the way we were before. Late at night, he clutched my hand with a guilty look, his eyes filled with heartache. He said, "If I hadn't left, you wouldn't have suffered so much. In the past few days, I've had another attack." Even though he's a miracle doctor, he could only watch over me helplessly, his eyes reddening from holding back. For my health, he researched prescriptions day and night. I finally stopped coughing up blood, but I remained weak. One day, the sky was clear, and I took Xiao Chui out to pick a birthday gift for Gu Huaicha. Unfortunately, we ran into Su Jiahe. Dressed in men's clothing, she lifted my chin with a folding fan, and said in a strangely cold tone, "Miss Shen is so intelligent. You should know who to provoke and who not to provoke, right? But Gu Lang is my husband." I looked at her quietly, a smile etched across my face. Gu Huaicha thought he had done everything perfectly, but I'm no fool. He'd dealt with every assassin Su Jiahe sent. As the saying goes, you don't fear thieves stealing, you fear thieves thinking about it. If I don't come out now, she might become desperate and reach out to my father. This morning, I could already sense that Gu Huaicha's patience with her was wearing thin, and now, I was determined to pierce that thinness once and for all. They were about to kill me, how could I, so foolishly, not see it? "Miss Shen, tell me, if I killed you, would Gu Huaicha blame me?" Her eyes were cold, and the sword shot out from her folding fan. At that moment, Gu Huaicha appeared. A colorless, odorless powder sprayed, and someone covered my mouth and nose, preventing me from inhaling a single drop. "Huaicha, you drugged me." Su Jiahe cried in disbelief, tears welling in her eyes. "Your Majesty, I've endured enough. I was simply grateful to you before. If you've misunderstood anything, I apologize. But Io is my life." Gu Huaicha looked at her coldly, ignoring the sadness in her eyes. If anyone else's wife heard this, they'd be incredibly moved. Unfortunately, I just found it ridiculous. Patience. Was his patience meant watching her repeatedly attempt to kill me, concealing her actions, and only intervening when he saw she was dying? How ridiculous. Shen Siyao, you did it on purpose. Su Jiahe wasn't stupid, she was actually quite clever. She'd had smooth sailing since childhood, and she'd assumed that whoever she set her sights on was hers. But Gu Huaicha not only married, but also killed his own people for his wife. How could she accept this? She waited day and night, finally finding her opportunity. She figured she'd get rid of me, so that Gu Huaicha would still be hers. But she hadn't expected me to outmaneuver her and outmaneuver her. Seeing the malice in her eyes, I smiled. "Your Majesty, you're joking. It's just tit for tat. How can that be called scheming?" The person next to me was slightly startled, looking at me with a strange look. In his mind, I was just a frail beauty with a bit of a temper. I'd never scheme against anyone, but even an honest person, when pushed to the limit, could be brutal. With that, I shook off Gu Huaicha's hand. In that instant, he fell to the ground, clutching his chest. I wiped the powder off his fingertips. At the same moment, the door opened and a bright yellow figure appeared before my eyes. He looked at Su Jiahe lying on the ground, his lips curled slightly. The queen made it so hard for me to find her. Su Jiahe's face paled instantly. I silently stepped back, watching her fear. The soldiers surrounded the place, and Su Jiahe's men were also under control. Now, she had nowhere to escape. 8. Ah, why, I know I was wrong. Su Jiahe, panicked, admitted her mistake decisively, looking at me with resentment in her eyes. I knew what she resented. From the moment Su Jiahe showed hostility towards me, I knew she had a problem with the male lead. Otherwise, why would she be thinking of the second male lead? I spent a fortune hiring spies and got the information. It turns out that after the finale, the hero and heroine no longer love each other as they once did. The emperor and empress share the empire. Only novels have such endings. The hero, with his lofty ambitions, how could he bear to share it with someone else? A man's love always takes precedence over his rights and interests. This seemingly sweet ending is actually fraught with danger. Sujaha, sensing the hero's murderous intent, wants to strike first and seize control of the world, but ultimately falls short and loses. Her poison was the hero's handiwork. That night the palace fire breaks out, and the empress burns to death. The real Sujaha escapes and sends a letter to Guhuaicha. She wants to live, but seeing Guhuaicha marry, she refuses to accept this fate. She wants the empire and become the first empress. Unable to defeat the hero, she sets her sights on Guhuaicha, the world's foremost doctor. She demands his help, but only if he's willing to sacrifice for her. She wanted to use Guhuaicha, but discovered he was no longer as accommodating as he once was. So she tried to kill me, but she didn't know I'd already informed the hero. I've never schemed against anyone, but I never sit still and wait for death. If I'd relied on Guhuaicha's hypocritical love, I'd probably have died 100 times over. After all, given Guhuaicha's character, he wouldn't do anything to the heroine, only send her away. Now that the hero has found her, how could the sinister and ruthless emperor let go of someone who coveted his empire? Sujaha naturally knew her fate would be dire. She tried to resist, to escape, but Guhuaicha had given her a muscle-softening powder, and she could only watch helplessly as she was captured and brought before the hero. The empress died in the fire. I'm deeply heartbroken. Therefore, I've observed a 3-year mourning period and have not taken a wife or concubine, the hero's voice said, cold and oppressive. Sujaha, tears streaming down her face, somehow found the strength to hug the male lead's legs. Ah, why, I won't dare any more. I'll leave Langya Pavilion to you. I'll be your queen, and I won't interfere in court affairs anymore, okay? The male lead didn't say anything, simply placing his hand on her neck, his grip tightening slightly. Sujaha's breathing gradually became labored. Let go. Her face flushed red as she fought desperately, the sorrow in her eyes unbearable. She and I were enemies too. I wouldn't be reluctant, and neither would the male lead. Out of curiosity, I glanced at Guhuaicha, only to see him staring at me, his eyes filled with brokenness. He also didn't look at the female lead. The supposed deep affection of the second male lead was just that. I looked away, no longer watching him, not noticing his slightly trembling fingertips. Finally, Sujaha died. Her body fell to the ground, and someone put it in a sack and took it away. Facing the emperor, I couldn't help but feel a little nervous, but I still stepped forward and saluted without making a single mistake. The hero looked at me, then glanced behind him with an ambiguous expression. He pursed his lips and said, "It's a miracle that he was knocked out by his own medicine." The moment he finished speaking, a warmth enveloped me from behind. Guhuaicha's voice rang out from above, tinged with bitterness, "Your Majesty, you're joking. I'll go back and comfort my wife." 9. After he finished speaking, I frowned at him, only to see him sigh helplessly. The next moment, he was unconscious. When I opened my eyes again, I was on the couch in the divine doctor's mansion. Recalling what had happened earlier, I sat up abruptly and saw Guhuaicha brewing medicine. Before I could question him, he spoke. "Io, you're awake." I lay barefoot on the couch and walked towards Guhuaicha. He kept his head down, not daring to look at me. "You know everything I've done." It wasn't a question but a confirmation. I lowered my head, the steam from the medicine jars blurring my vision, making it difficult to see the person in front of me. "Yes." He paused in his attempt to add fuel to the fire, then spoke in a deep voice. "The queen murdered the king. Your Majesty and I staged a scene. Io, the only person in my heart is you." He finally raised his eyes to me, his love evident, and an endless stream of guilt enveloped him, forcing him to look up at me. I looked at his familiar face and chuckled softly. "So, leaving me behind was part of your plan, right?" "No." He froze, the guilt in his eyes growing deeper. "I'm sorry, Io. You're innocent and kind, and I don't want you involved in these things." He tried to take my hand, but I pushed him away. His hand paused in mid-air, and he spoke in a hoarse voice, "Io, you still won't forgive me?" I only chuckled softly, then couldn't help but laugh, my eyes filled with sarcasm. Why should I forgive you? Who are you plotting against? It has nothing to do with me. You didn't do what you promised, and that's your problem. You didn't want me to know this, so you hurt me recklessly. And finally, you said you had your reasons. Gu Huaicha, do you think you're so great? I was in so much pain I couldn't breathe, I kept coughing up blood, and that's what you call protection, right? In the end, your plan was accomplished, everyone was happy, and the only one hurt was me. Tears kept falling, but I saw his eyes growing colder. I had hoped for him to come back, for him to stay with me. But all I got was his indifference, his hasty departure with someone else in his arms, and his words that he didn't want me to get involved. What a ridiculous statement. I never accept concealment, and I don't want to experience the misunderstandings between the hero and heroine in the book. Everyone wants to mend a broken mirror, but no one knows if that mirror can ever be as flawless as before. No one bore the pain I endured for me, and I didn't mean to blame him, but people are inherently selfish. I couldn't accept how he could lift me to heaven one moment, and then send me to hell the next. For my own good, he said, trying to erase everything that had happened. What kind of dream was he? The atmosphere suddenly fell silent. His hand dropped from the air, accidentally knocking over a medicine jar, instantly scalding it red. He didn't move, as if he couldn't feel the pain. I raised my hand to wipe away my tears, then turned and left without hesitation, leaving a single word: remember to sign the divorce papers. At least let me cure you. The moment I opened the door, he finally spoke, pleading. I didn't turn my head, only saying calmly, no cure. Forget about living 100 years. The sooner I die, the sooner I'll be reborn. I wasn't supposed to live until now. He gave me these 2 years of my life, and I'll use my final days to earn money and repay him. I no longer want to accept even a shred of his kindness, let alone have anything to do with him. Some knots are untieable. 10. Later, I returned home, and Gu Huaicha's divorce papers arrived. He knew my personality well. If he continued to control me, he would only push me further away. I thought I could finally start a new life, but Gu Huaicha's ghost lingered. When we met again, he was dressed in white, standing before me, smiling warmly. My name is Gu Huaicha. Nice to meet Miss Shen. He pretended not to recognize me, wanting to start over with me, but he was willing to play dumb, and I wasn't. That same day, I had him kicked out and forbade my father to let him in again. My father was silent for a moment, then agreed to my request, but his back was hunched. I knew he wanted me to live and receive treatment, but father, I don't want to go back. Being hurt once is enough. Since that day, Gu Huaicha hasn't appeared again, but a plain-looking court physician has arrived. My father said he had specially invited this from another country. The day was still sunny. Seeing the pleading in my father's eyes, I finally agreed. The new court doctor was a quiet man. He simply packed the medicine and left without stopping. Thinking of Gu Huaicha, whom I hadn't seen in a while, I had a suspicion in my heart, but I didn't expose it. Who wants to die when they can live? If he's willing to treat me, then I'll accept it. Now we're just strangers. There's nothing money can't repay. A year passed in a flash. My health had fully recovered, and I took over the family business. Before, I was tormented by illness, lacking energy, and I'd forgotten about business, my forte. Now that I was well, my ambitions naturally revived. In the blink of an eye, a few years passed, and Xiao Trading Company spread across Dasheng. The court doctor also took his leave, refusing to accept a penny. In the end, I didn't insist. If you have money and don't want it, I'll keep it. Another year passed, and Daddy began urging me to get married. I ignored them, dismissing every proposal. Later, Daddy stopped urging me and simply adopted a girl for me to take care of. That day, I took the child's hand and adopted her as my own. Once she was able to handle things on her own, I became the hands-off manager. By then, I was already 26, and I spent my days relaxing in a rattan chair, enjoying the company of Daddy, eating melons and watching operas. I couldn't have been happier. Everything in the past had faded into oblivion. I no longer remembered anything about transmigrating into a book, or the male lead or the supporting role. Now, I'm the boss of Dashing's premier imperial merchant, living a life of ecstasy. What could I possibly want? Extra story. The day Shen Xiao left, Gu Huaicha collapsed to the ground, blood gushing from his mouth. He gazed at Shen Xiao's back and spoke tremblingly, I will repay your pain. But his voice was too soft for Shen Xiao to hear. That day, he suffered through for solid hours of pain, feeling as if he had been pulled from the water. After fainting several times, he suddenly understood why Shen Xiao had refused to forgive him. The pain was too much. He lay on the ground in a state of despair, tears streaming silently, but not for himself. He regretted disregarding Shen Xiao's health in order to gain Sujiaha's trust. He remembering how the backlash was only more painful than what he had endured. He dared no longer ask for her forgiveness. After dawn, he delivered the divorce papers and saw her smile. His heart skipped a beat, and Gu Huaicha thought, if only they could start over. A few days later, Gu Huaicha persuaded Shen's father to let him into the Shen residence, hoping to start over with her, but she refused. Kicked out, Gu Huaicha stared at the Shen residence's gate and swallowed the bitter taste in his mouth. He knew Shen Xiao would never accept him again. But he couldn't bear to see her die, so he disguised his appearance and entered the mansion, fearing she might notice anything. He delivered the medicine and left immediately. Thankfully, she didn't refuse, and her health gradually recovered. Later, Shen Xiao's fame grew. She gave Gu Huaicha countless silver gifts, but he refused them all and simply left the Shen mansion. Only when she wished for a long life would his obsession finally be resolved. Afterwards, he returned to his profession as a traveling doctor, but there was no Gu Huaicha left in this world.